Hello, and welcome to episode 4, I believe it is. There is something wrong, very wrong, with this video that you may have noticed. Yes, that is right. I accidentally turned off my, recording for this entire video. Well, not visual recording, audio recording. So the entire original clip was in complete silence, all 22 minutes of it. Obviously, I'll be editing this down to not include all of those 22 minutes because many of them were very, very boring. For example, this part, which I originally planned to disinclude because it was, just me sorting chests, but now it's a fitting space for me to explain the predicament which I am in. Yeah, that was a mistake, a very big mistake, a very unfortunate one. So for the rest of this video, I will not be talking in the current tense, I guess. A lot of, I said some interesting-ish stuff, noticings, and I'll probably forget what I was originally saying in that part of the video. So, around this point, I decided to go up to the merchant because I noticed that last video while I was editing, I missed the merchant arriving, and I was surprised that he was still around because a day hadn't passed because, last video was only 5 minutes in the original clip. So I decide to buy a piggy bank and a bug net, but not the pylon because given that he doesn't have a home and doesn't enjoy the underground as much as he could enjoy, the forest, I don't buy the pylon. It's 15 gold, and no matter what I sell, I'm probably not going to have 15 gold. So I buy the piggy bank, I buy the bug net, and then I leave. Then I place this down, but I realize that I can't place the piggy bank on top of the anvil. So I decide to switch around the workbench and the anvil on the rack that I made. Very menial stuff. Nothing much is really going on in this part of the video at all. I appear to have paused to say something, but, audio didn't exist. I was talking to myself for 22 minutes. That is quite silly, absolutely preposterous. Ridiculous. I don't know. Preposterous would be fitting in that sense. Why did I say preposterous? Anyways, I'm just yapping when I notice that I can use my conch to teleport to the surface beach, so I decide to do that. I begin burning up, and I notice that the visual effect and the sound it makes while you're burning are quite satisfying, so I decide to burn up in the sun. Sadly, the sound, you know what happened to the sound. You can't hear the sound. You can see the nice visual effect, though. Then, I am confused why the achievements don't register that I got the achievement for burning in the sun while donning the vampire garb. I realize what is required to get this achievement later in the video, near the very end. So, watch to the very end. Please don't skip. I'm just confused for a bit. Quite boring stuff, really. Not especially interesting at all. You can use the umbrella to protect yourself from the deadly rays of the giant death ball of fire. The sun is a deadly laser, So I use that And I begin traveling the surface, looking for loot, and, the novelty of being on the surface. I keep getting confused on when night happens, because night isn't happening, despite it being quite dark, and I continually burn up in the sun, which I find quite annoying. But luckily, I only have to burn when I need to use the bat to traverse some of this very difficult jungle terrain, which is the whole jungle. So, also it's just generally faster. And as soon as I get into this protected area where I won't die from the sun because there's a background wall, it turns night. So hiding wasn't especially necessary. But there's also loot, so it's fine. Then I get a bit cornered in this pond while trying to grab the whatever garbage is in it. Yeah, now it is finally night and I can fly freely. I stick to the surface looking for loot for a while, but then I realized that actually I can just go up into the sky and look for sky loot instead of constantly hitting the water and being chased by enemies, which happens somewhat soon. It appears the revelation did not occur to me for a while. And here I go, into the sky. Now, for most of this, I was either talking or planned to cut it out of the video, so that is exactly what I will be doing. But first, I notice a sky island, which happens to be a water island, so I ignore it. And then I keep flying, and I find... Well, first I find a clumsy slime, which I promptly pop the balloon of, adding it to my town. But finally, after noticing a little bump in my black outline of undiscovered land, I notice a sky island. This first one containing some vanity as well as the noisemaker for the vampire, and a horseshoe, which is quite nice. Then I decide to add a torch, so then an NPC could move in so I can get a feel for what NPCs are willing to move into my house at the time, because I can't bother to remember all their spawning conditions. I find them quite annoying. I also put the lucky horseshoe in my spot replacing the climbing claws, because the climbing claws are unnecessary, and lucky horseshoe is very necessary and nice to have. Then I fly for a bit more before discovering another sky island. Around this time, I also noticed that if I fly diagonally up and down constantly, it's better. You find more islands. I begin to think that every single sky chest will contain this Gravedigger set and the vampire thing, but this is not the case. I also get a fancy new weapon, the Star Fury, which is much, much better than what I already had. While checking my inventory, I notice in the corner of my screen a sky island, which, is exciting. I don't really have much to say about the sky islands at this point. I'm slightly disappointed by the fact that there wasn't much loot in the chest, and also, I got a celestial magnet. Disgusting. And, I'm not going mage, so it's useless. But, sky island, some lead bars, always good to have. I continue on my way, and for a very long time, this was a very, very long distance between sky islands. When I noticed this waterfall, I was going to ignore it, but then I realized, why is there water falling from the sky? It's not rain. That is a sky island with a very small house. And I get the balloon. because, balloons are good. Another irritatingly long flight before finding another sky island, which contains a lucky horseshoe, which I already had, which is disappointing. I also noticed that the night is going to come to an end in a somewhat short amount of time, which obviously means I won't be able to be exploring for that much longer. Anyways, I find another small sky island. Just as the night is coming to an end, I also get a battery warning message, this one containing another Sky Fury with a worse modifier, disappointingly. I also added a torch, so then I can get some more NPCs. And just as I begin flying again, the day comes to an end. I attempt to return, but to no avail. I fall burning to the ground and drop a gold that I had obtained from the chests. Now at spawn again. My journey has come to an end. Journey's end, as all Terraria journeys do. That could not even be considered a joke. That was just garbage. Anyways, some more chest swords. And now I decide to teleport back to the beach. To the other beach I intended to go. So I could do, a bit of surface exploring. Also, around this point in editing, I realized that you can hear the bass audio, including the nice sound that it plays when the vampire is burning, which makes some of my earlier audio sound like a complete... Proving my point. Sounds like I'm a complete idiot. Which isn't inaccurate, so there's no point in changing the audio. That's also because I am very lazy, and I can't be bothered to change the audio. Whatever. Nobody watches these anyways, so, does it matter if I made myself look like an idiot? No, it doesn't. There's some fallen logs here, Find another cave, which I loot the chest of, and I also test out how the burning mechanic works. From this I learned that it's just dependent on background walls. So, background walls are pretty good to, I've been recording very loud, constantly talking audio for a very long time now, and my brain is starting to hurt. I don't usually put very much effort into vocals and talking, as you can tell by my past videos. I find my gold again, which is quite nice. I teleport home. And then I realize that the vampire achievement, maybe you can only get it if you're wearing the actual vampire vanity, not just in the vampire seed, because it does say, don the vampire garb and burn up in the sun, not just be a vampire, burn up in the sun. I sort my chests again. Well, it's not really sorting, is it? It's more of just dumping. I dump my inventory into my chest again, and then I get the achievement, which is good. Then I decide to check this side of the ocean for any chests. Spoiler warning, it has none. Spoiler warning, I can't think of any movie spoilers because I don't watch movies. If I watched movies, that really would have been funny, wouldn't it? I'm done with this. I want to go back to not talking like I do in the videos. Just doing this. I check my map. Look at that nice filled out map. Goodbye.